that's Sender Trovitz. Here we have a picture of him and some other pictures of him we have here in group pictures. You can see where he is. Really in the older years.
The oldest picture we have, I think, is 1906. So it's 1906. It's Rav Natan Trovitz and Baba Leah. People know as Baba Leah Trovitz from 1906. And in the afternoon, those who want to go to the cemetery can see where Baba Leah and Natan Trovitz and Sender Trovitz and Fega Trovitz are buried right here.
Baba Leah is Sender's grandmother. Baba Leah is your great-great-great-grandmother.
No, she's his mother. No, she's Sender's mother.
There's a lot of greats in this.
Baba Leah is Sender's grandmother.
Mother. Good, just a test.
Okay. נחום אתרוג, רבי נחום אתרוג.
חבר'ה, לא לצחוק, זה מסובך הסיפור הזה. אילו ידעתם כמה קשה היה להרכיב את הלוח הזה. כל הזמן. They are asking me all the time, how did you manage to put it all together? And others ask me, why you didn't put it all together? So Yossi will explain for me later.
Okay. Rabbi Nachum Etrog comes at the year of 6. He's 6 years old when he comes with his grandfather and from Romania.
Yes.
And he grows up. He's already a religious student that knows portions of Talmud by heart, and he's deemed to be a Talmid Chacham. Right? Okay? Even from the beginning. At the age of 17, he married Tzipora Fega Herman from Tveria. I know that name of a family from Tveria, from Tiberias. And maybe the most important thing in his life, the most important event of his life was when the great rabbi, the Ritbaz, Rabbi Raphael Yaakov David ben Ze'ev, comes from Lithuania. He learned in Volozhin, he was in Slutsk, he comes from Lita, right, from Lithuania, and in 1905, and he starts the yeshiva of Torat Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Nachum Etrog had already started a yeshiva, but he becomes his assistant in this very famous yeshiva here in Tzfat. He also writes articles, and he wrote an article in the famous newspaper Chabatzelet on about this yeshiva. It was a very important incident because that's when they started learning here, really for the first time, the Talmud Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud. That's what the Ritbaz came and started a new exciting thing to learn something they didn't learn until then, the Jerusalem Talmud. And so Rabbi Nachum Etrog was his very good assistant, and he was also a teacher of Zaidi Heller Tzipora. Okay, he was one of Zaidi Heller's teachers, Rabbi Nachum Etrog, it says here. Then the yeshiva had another name, the Chatam Sofer, turned into Chatam Sofer. Harav Zaidi Heller became the Rosh Yeshiva afterward of that yeshiva. And in 1912 was the wedding ceremony of Rabbi Nachum Etrog's son, Rabbi Yitzchak David. His son married the daughter of Sender Trovitz, and of course, officiating the ceremony was the Ritbaz himself. That was also an exciting event, certainly in the family history. That was in 1912. 1912, a little before First World War. Okay? Besides that, we know that Rabbi Nachum Etrog was the head of the Romanian Kollel, but also did things that were quite unique. He was a Zionist, and he put money into the Moshavot, like the Moshavat Machanaim, outside of Tzfat. He was one of the founders of Machanaim. That was a Zionist enterprise. These were times when no one knew what's going to happen afterward, and he decided to put in money into Machanaim, and through that he had connections also with Harav Kook. Harav Yitzhak Cohen Cook, who was the head chief rabbi of Israel later on, and of course the Zionist. He was the Zionist chief rabbi. That's also very important to mention. He was also officially authorized to use the stamp of the office of the chief rabbinate in Tzfat. He himself is not buried in Tzfat. He's buried in Yerushalayim, in Har HaZitim, in the Mount of Olives Cemetery.
And we have a map if anybody would like to go. Rav Kalman Newman and I had the joy of going to his grave while we were in Yerushalayim last week.
It's in the Romanian part.
In the Romanian, next to the grandmother of Shoshana Haya Etrog.
My grandmother.
Shoshana. Okay. One last thing about him, he wrote a number of books, including an interesting book that I'm interested in. He wrote the book Evel Moshe on eulogies, on halachot on eulogies, and including the eulogy on Rabbi Shmuel Heller. He wrote also, and I'm personally interested in that also. Okay, that's Rabbi Nachum Etrog. And his family is down below. I want to say also a few words on his son, Rabbi Yitzchak David Etrog, who was born in 1893 here in Tzfat. He was born 20 meters and 1 year before where my grandfather was born, on the same street. On the same street, in the Friedman house, just down the road. So I'm sure they grew up together and learned together. And Rabbi Yitzchak David Etrog went to America in 1915 to New York. My grandfather went to Chicago in 1921. I'm sure they knew each other. And I remember the Etrog name as a boy listening to my stories from my grandfather and my grandmother. Okay, maybe the most interesting thing, already at the age of 14, he delivered his first sermon in front of a large crowd at the opening ceremony of the Chatam Sofer Yeshiva that I mentioned before. He was picked to give a drasha, a sermon. He was 14 years old. That's Rabbi Yitzchak David. He also was very impressed by Rav Kook. He came in 1911 in his famous tour of the Moshavot, and Rav Yitzchak David saw him and was astounded by Rav Kook. In 1912, the famous marriage to Chana Rachel, officiating was the Ritbaz, and then he started to receive something that I think is astounding. The first of 6 ordainings, smicha, smicha l'rabanut. 6 ordainings he received from 6 different rabbis. The first one, after his wedding, from the Ritbaz himself. The second, from Rabbi Clears in Tveria, because he went down to Tveria after getting married. He learned there from the famous Rabbi Moshe Clears. He received smicha, ordaining. From his father, Rabbi Nachum Etrog, that's the third. The most surprising ordaining is from Rabbi Shlomo Alfandari, who lived in this house for a few years.
In this house,
in the
upstairs, yes.
He lived upstairs. He was one of the chief rabbis of the Sephardi community in Tzfat. So we got an ordaining. He calls him, in the pre-Ein Sadal, he calls him his rabbi. He had also a Sephardi rabbi. That's unusual.
Yeah.
Okay, besides that, he got an ordaining from Rabbi Sonnenfeld, the non-Zionist, famous rabbi of Yerushalayim, and also ordained by Rabbi Tzvi Pesach Frank, the Zionist rabbi, Ashkenazi rabbi of Yerushalayim. So we had all the smichot possible from all types of communities, all over Eretz Israel.
Yeah, he said.
Yeah.
Your father?
He mentioned.
Yeah.
No. She's watching you very carefully.
And Rabbi Cook.
Yeah.
He was correct.
It doesn't say specifically he got ordained by Rav Kook, but maybe he did. It doesn't say here. Maybe you know better.
Yeah, he did.
But if so, that's the 7th.
That was his pride and joy, that he got a smicha from a Rav Kook.
So we have to add that on, Judy.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay, that's the 7th ordaining. Okay.